I did a video yesterday on my narcissist channel about how giving narcissists the what we would call the quiet treatment, but really just breaking contact with narcissists can have some very negative effects, but they're worth it. Then, when I got done, I was taking a look at some of the points that I made, and I said, what about people with Asperger syndrome, people who are autistic, who are quiet all the time? What kind of ramifications do we face? Because, it's just kind of our nature to be quiet. So, why don't I do a video about that? And we'll talk to these guys about some of the things that we can expect and probably you have already experienced. Just because you're just not outgoing, or as they would say, shy or withdrawn, they being neurotypical people. So I've got 6 of these things, but before I dig into those, let's just mention the obvious. And this is really not one of the 6. We could say it's number 7, but we're going to put it first, and that is that people just don't really understand quiet people, and so consequently they tend to ignore us, and so we are left out of the loop. We're not part of any social activity to any real extent, and I think that's just nature, just natural for people to do that. If I am around a quiet person, I tend to respond to them the same way. I mean, how do you react to somebody who won't talk? How do you communicate with somebody who doesn't communicate? It's kind of tough, but when you are by nature someone who either doesn't communicate or really can't communicate, and many times that is a problem, for example, with selective mutism, where there are some people you just can't talk to. It's really a bizarre, strange, I was going to say weird, but strange neurological phenomenon where this person, with me, particularly when I was a kid, it wasn't this person. It was almost everyone. I just could not communicate with it. Couldn't speak to them. Couldn't talk to them, period. All right, let's dig into these things. But number 1 is they never learn. Now, when I say they again, I'm speaking of neurotypical people. They just don't catch on to why you are quiet. They think there may be something wrong with you, and you would think, after a while, they would figure out that you're not a bad person, you're just quiet, that you're not aloof, you're just quiet. But it seems to me, now this is based on my life experience. This is based upon what I have observed people treating, how I have observed people treating me, is they just don't, they don't see the person beneath the quietness. It's as if just being quiet, being shy, whatever term they want to call it, that's like a mask that's hiding somebody, and they just assume it must be a bad person. Now, there were, throughout my life, some exceptions to that. For example, when I was little, or, maybe under 10 years old, adults would think I was just well-behaved. So, yeah, that's why this kid's quiet. Apparently, his parents taught him to be quiet. Well, they kind of did, come to think of it, but when I was little, before I went to school, before I went to kindergarten, my mom and sister sat me down, my older sister, who was 2 years older than me, and she had actually been all the way around the block. So she was, worldly wise compared to me. She was 7, I was 5, or 4, 6, whatever it was. And her and mom sat me down and said, when you go to school, don't talk, you get in trouble. Now, what they meant was don't talk out of turn, don't talk out of line, but that's not what they said. And being an Aspie, I tended to take things very literally, and so when they said don't talk, I went to school, and guess what? I didn't say anything to anyone. I didn't want to get in trouble. A little 4 or 5-year-old, I don't remember how old I was when I went to kindergarten, but yeah, I just kept it quiet. Kept it very, very, very quiet. So the thing that I've learned is when you are that age, people interpret that as just being well-behaved. But as you get older, particularly in your teen years, junior high, teen years, people think you are, well, your peers think you're weird. Your peers think you're a little bit off. Well, you are. You're off-center. They are centric, and you are not concentric, but you are eccentric. So they see you as a little bit odd, but when you get into your adult years, then they think man, this guy is aloof, or this guy is not intelligent, or this guy is not, he's something that's way out there. So it depends on your age and your circumstances. So when are they going to figure this out? When are they going to learn that sometimes being quiet just means you're quiet? Doesn't mean you're shy. Doesn't mean you're fearful. Doesn't mean that you're aloof. Doesn't mean that you're well behaved. Just mean you're quiet. Doesn't, there's nothing else to it. Or it could mean you have Asperger syndrome. Could be you have, could be that you have high functioning autism. Or it could be, as we mentioned before, that you have this mutism, selective mutism, that you just can't talk to people. They never get that. I said this in another video, but throughout my entire life, nobody came up and properly diagnosed me and say, I know what your problem is. You have Asperger syndrome, or you have autism. Nobody ever said that to me until I went to see a therapist at age 65, 66, whatever it was. And she didn't say it was a problem. She just, after several sessions and evaluations of talking to me and talking to my wife and going through all of that, she said, you have, you're autistic. You're high functioning autistic. Didn't call it a problem, but that was the first time I ever got a correct diagnosis. And that, by the way, throw this in as a bonus, is why I think y'all, if you haven't done it already, should consider seeing a therapist. I mean, a qualified therapist. Not, not somebody who thinks they know everything about everything. Now, YouTube, I think, is a really good source, but it's not a therapist. What I do on YouTube is based upon my life experience because I've been there, done that, and that helps augment what a professional therapist would do, but doesn't replace it. You've got to keep that in mind. Number two is sometimes your quietness, your silence may evoke a massive response that you are not expecting. This has happened a few times, but not often in my experience. But let's imagine that you're driving to work or wherever you go in a snowstorm. If you live in an area where it storms, or if you don't, okay, it's a torrential downpour, whatever. Anyhow, it's bad weather. So you're in a snowstorm, and you're creeping your way to where your destination, and you get to an intersection, busy intersection, and everybody's in a hurry, even though they're creeping and going slow because it's so slippery out, and your car dies. Car just quits, won't do anything. Turn the key, nothing. It's like the battery's dead, but probably it's something else. And what a lot of people will do, they get mad. They get mad at their car because their car should respond. And it doesn't. It just doesn't. Same thing with a computer. I've got a computer in the shop right now. Frustrating. Turn the thing on, it just wouldn't boot. Finally I got it to boot, but didn't boot the way it's supposed to boot. So I had to take it to the shop because I'm not smart enough to fix those things. It's frustrating. So think of yourself as a car that won't start when you're quiet, or the computer that won't boot when you're quiet. And some people think that's, they get infuriated because they find it very offensive. They need you to talk. They need that interaction. And quite frankly, they're probably a little bit selfish because they want you to do what they want you to do when they want you to do it. But still, what we're talking about is how NTs react to your silence, and sometimes you might expect this. For the NT to react in a way that you really don't think that he or she should react, and that is explosive. All right, number 3 is sometimes your silence, your quietness, however you want to say it, will prompt others. Number 3 is may prompt others to, I'm looking at my notes here on the screen, and sometimes I misread them, may result in what I call tabbing. I just made that term up. That's not a clinical term. But I was thinking, there are people who wonder if you get a problem, and so they keep tabs on you. So I made up the term tabbing to explain this because I didn't know if there's a clinical term for it or not. But in my experience, people sometimes do this. Not a lot. But they wonder what you're up to. Particularly if they don't know you, they may think you're a little bit sneaky. They may think you're up to no good, and so they want to keep tabs on you. So they snoop, kind of follow you around maybe. I don't think a lot of people would go to that extreme, but sometimes they do. All right, number 4 is this. Sometimes, well, this is not sometimes, this is, at least in my experience, a lot of times people will actually, believe it or not, and I'm sure you do believe it because you've been there, done that, they will talk smack about you. You know what that means, talk smack? It means trash talk you behind your back. Sometimes people do it to your face because they think you're afraid of them and because they're jerks, to be quite honest with you. But usually, when people trash talk you, sometimes they will do it to your face to belittle you, to devalue you, devaluate you, but usually it's behind your back because they want to blindside you. So they think you're being quiet because you're aloof, and they're going to pay you back because they're offended because you didn't talk to them. I read a news story one time about a guy who was like a clerk in a store, and he had a customer that wouldn't talk to him. So he got mad and punched him. Later, he learned out that the guy who wouldn't talk to him was actually deaf. There was a reason why the guy wasn't responding. Well, neurotypicals, we're not deaf, but we still have neurological condition called mind blindness that we don't socialize the way other people do. So we can't help it. That's the way we are. That's the way nature made us. That's how DNA came together. At the point in time of conception, that's been augmented by the influence of the culture we're in, society. And they get mad at you. They try to get you back. There are sometimes, say that you finally get a job. If you have Asperger syndrome, you probably have difficult working, finding and holding down a job. But let's say you get a job. And you're working, I don't know, maybe in a fast food restaurant, and they see you in there. This person that you've offended because you wouldn't talk to him, because you can't talk to him, because that's the way you are. So they say, I'm going to get this person back, and what they will do is maybe a few days later, they will contact the supervisor. Maybe they'll call in or send an email or post something critical on, their website, whatever, about you and say how you were mean and nasty and gave them bad service. They just lie. They're just making this stuff up. People actually do this sort of thing. And, why am I telling you? You know this because you've experienced it, right? But still, it's something that you need to watch out for in the future. And number 6 is sometimes just being silent or being quiet may evoke ghosting. And this is kind of a tit-for-tat response where people think that you are being rude, they think you're being aloof, and trash talking you behind the back, they're going to get you back. But this time they're going to treat you the way that you are treating them. They're going to give you a taste of your own medicine. Not realizing, as we said, number 1, people never catch on, at least in my life. For over 6 decades, they never caught on to why I was the way it was. Not even I caught on until I was probably in my late 50s, early 60s. I had no idea. I just thought, that's the way I am. But what they will do is they will ghost you. That is to say, they may ignore you. You're going to ignore me, I will ignore you. You're going to not talk to me, I will not talk to you. I will treat you exactly the way you're treating me, and I'll let you know how it feels. The difference being obvious that you're not intentionally trying to hurt somebody. You're not being aloof. You're not trying to make them feel bad, but, some people just not bright.